Elijah was a messenger of God and a prophet to his people. He lived during an era when Baal worship ran rampant, and the shepherds that God had appointed over his sheep, the kings of Israel, often led his people astray and led them to commit sins and worship idols made of stone and rock. Elijah was one of the few people left who continued to have a belief in the true God of Israel, the God who saved them from the desert, the God of their forefathers, of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. But his belief in God was often met with adversity. His love of what was good put him at crossroads with those who twisted the very definition of right and wrong to meet their unjust and selfish needs. Of course, for his righteousness he was persecuted. But through all his sufferings and trials and hardships, not once did he forsake the God that he so loved, and not once did God forget him. Elijah was a messenger to his people and a prophet of God, and this is his story.
On the throne of Israel sat Ahab and his wife Queen Jezebel, who was originally a Phoenician princess, who never gave up her Phoenician way of life. Thanks to Queen Jezebel, Israel worshipped the god of the Phoenicians. God saw this and was not pleased. He sent Elijah to warn the king that if he continued in causing Israel to sin, punishment would be swift. Ahab scoffed at Elijah's warning, saying, "Didn't Moses already warn us that the rain would cease and the lands would not give forth its produce if we were to worship other gods?" Yet nothing has happened as of yet. Elijah replied, "God has been patient with you, but you don't seem to realize it. Now you will see that not merely shall Moses' words be fulfilled, but mine also. I tell you, in God's name, that from as of today, there shall be no rain until I say the word." From the day forth, a severe drought and famine spread in the land of Israel and spilled across its borders and would last for many years.
Now God told Elijah to withdraw to a desert place. God told Elijah to drink from the brook, and he commanded the ravens to feed Elijah twice. In the morning and in the evening, Elijah was brought bread and meat from the table of the king of Judah. Imagine the king's surprise when the ravens swooped down upon the table and disappeared with part of his meal. When this became a regular occurrence, the king ordered that a special portion of bread and meat were to be served with his meals, and the ravens never failed to pick it up.
God told Elijah to head to the land of Sidon, where he would find a woman who would provide for him his food. At the gates of Sidon, he saw a woman picking up some sticks. She was a widow by the name of Zarephath, and he asked her, "Can you spare me some bread and some water?" The woman replied that all she had was a little bit of flour in a jar and a little bit of olive oil in a jug, and she was going to go home to give her and her son their last meal. But she felt pity for the stranger, and trusting in the providence of God, she gave him some food. Now a great miracle took place. The little bit of flour in that jar never seemed to finish, and the little bit of olive oil in the jug never ran dry. The same food lasted them throughout the whole famine. Later, the son of the woman's only child, was nearing death and was ill. She fell at Elijah's feet and begged him to heal him. And so Elijah revived him. After this, Elijah continued on his way.
After 3 years of drought and barren lands, God told Elijah to meet King Ahab. Elijah told the king God had brought the drought because the people had turned from the one true God and worshipped Baal. God's command could have very well been the death of Elijah, but Elijah boldly called out to King Ahab, challenged him to gather all the Israelites and the false prophets and to meet at Mount Carmel. When the people all gathered on Mount Carmel, Elijah asked them to commit, to choose which God they would serve. Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal, asked them to place a bull on the altar and pray for Baal to set fire to the bull. The prophets did as they were told. They wailed and cried out, but nothing happened. They shouted and cut themselves to gain the attention and favor of Baal, but no fire fell.
Undeterred, Elijah trusted God, and when it was his turn to call for fire, Elijah rebuilt God's altar, dug a trench around it, and prepared a bull to lay on the altar. Then he drenched everything in water 4 times over.
And then in his grand moment with the prophets of Baal pitted against the one man of God, Elijah cried out to God on behalf of the people of Israel. At Elijah's cry, God rained fire from heaven upon the altar, and the flames not only consumed the sacrifice, but the wood, the altar, and the dust all around it. After seeing this amazing display, the people fell on their knees and proclaimed, "The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God." And as revival broke out into the land, the dams of heaven broke too. Much needed rain pattered down on the dusty soil, bringing a new season of fruitfulness to a dead land. In the moment of waiting for a miracle, Elijah repaired the broken altar and called the people by their name. "Your name shall be Israel."
The story of Elijah being taken up into heaven. On the day God had selected his servant Elijah to be brought up to heaven, he left Gilgal with his disciple Elisha. They reached the shores of the Jordan, followed by 50 young prophets who had come with them out of Jericho and stood watching at a distance. Elijah took his mantle, and rolling it up like a staff, he smote the waters, which separated. The prophets passed through the river on dry land. Walking with Elisha between the parted floods, Elijah asked his disciple if he could do something for him before God took him away. Elisha replied that he would like to ask for a double measure of the divine spirit of his master. Elijah assured that although his wish was no small thing, it would come true if Elisha merited seeing his master go up to heaven. As they thus went on and talked, they were separated by a fiery chariot followed by fiery horses, and Elijah was taken up like a whirlwind into heaven.
Elijah's message and the meaning of his name go hand in hand together like a fresh glass of chaya and rusk. He encouraged others to believe that truly the Lord was God, just as his name suggests. As a prophet, he adamantly shared God's message and warnings. Often, both came under fire. Sometimes, however, people turned from following false gods and found themselves deep in worship with the Holy One. Multiple times, God directed Elijah to speak hard truths, trust for provision when circumstances were bleak, or stand firm in faith of God's promises being fulfilled. Time and time together, Elijah set the example of loyal obedience to God our Father.